All right, let's talk about data. Every company on the planet is just swimming in it. It's everywhere. So the big question is, how do you turn all that chaos into something genuinely useful, a real asset? Well, it turns out there's a professional playbook for that very thing. It's called the DAMA Data Management Body of Knowledge, or DMBOK for short. And today, we're going to break it down. So this quote really gets right to the heart of the DMBOK. It's a fascinating idea, right? Data is an asset, but it's weird. It's not like other assets. Think about it. If you use a company car, it gets wear and tear. Office supplies, they get used up. But data, you can use it and it's still there. You can copy it, share it, reuse it a million times over. And that unique quality is what makes it so incredibly powerful, but also what makes it so darn complex to manage. And that leads us right here to the two faces of data. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin. On one hand, it's this incredible asset, right? It helps you create value, it drives all your big decisions. But on the other hand, oh boy, it's a huge risk. It can be misused, it can be totally misunderstood, and it can become a massive liability if it's wrong or, gets into the wrong hands. And that tension, that's exactly why we need to talk about managing it properly. Okay, so how do you manage that? How do you walk that tightrope between massive value and massive risk? Well, the answer isn't just to, wing it and hope for the best. Nope. There is a professional discipline for this, a structured playbook that experts use to navigate this complex world. And that discipline is called data management. Now, I know this definition looks a little formal, but look closer. The key phrase here is that it's about the development, execution, and supervision of all these plans and policies. What that really means is this is not a one-and-done IT project. It's an ongoing, continuous business function. It's about constantly working to control, protect, and most importantly, enhance the value of your data. And to do all that effectively, you really can't just guess. You need a map, a guide. And for data professionals all over the world, this is that map, the DAMA DMBOK. It's the comprehensive, globally recognized framework that lays out all the principles and best practices for the entire field. It's the real deal. So the DMBOK takes all of this complexity and organizes it into a really simple but really powerful visual metaphor, the data wheel. Let's take a look inside and see how it all fits together. Okay, so the whole framework is visualized as a wheel, and that's not just to make it look cool on a slide. The structure itself tells you something really important about how data management is supposed to work. You've got all these different areas of expertise, the spokes, and they all revolve around one central coordinating hub. And here it is, the DMA wheel. Now look closely. See what's sitting right there in the middle, at the very hub of the wheel? It's data governance. That's the core. It's what holds everything else together and coordinates all the other knowledge areas you see around it. Now, this framework is huge, it's really comprehensive, but for our purposes, we're going to zoom in on three absolutely critical pieces. That's central hub of governance, plus security, and quality. So let's start with that all-important hub, data governance. What on earth is it? Well, think of it as the rules of the road for all the data in your organization. If all your data is like traffic flowing through the company, then governance sets up the traffic lights, the stop signs, the speed limits, all the rules you need to make sure everything moves smoothly and safely and doesn't just crash into a huge pileup. Okay, rules of the road. That makes sense. But it brings up a really practical question, doesn't it? It's great to have rules, but who's actually responsible for making them? And maybe more importantly, who enforces them? Well, the DMBOK's answer is that it's not just one person's job. It's actually a team effort with different layers of responsibility. You can see here you've got a high-level data governance council. They're the ones thinking about the big picture, the major initiatives. Then you have a data governance office, and their job is to create the standards that apply across the whole company. But, and this is so crucial, you have data stewardship teams. These are the people on the ground, the subject matter experts who actually manage the data day to day. It's this structure that connects the big picture strategy all the way down to the daily execution. All right, so moving to the next piece of our wheel. Having rules of the road is fantastic, but you also need to protect the actual cars, right? You need locks and keys, and that's where data security comes in. If governance is about setting the rules, think of security as the team that installs the locks, hands out the keys, and monitors the alarm systems. They're all about making sure only the right people get access to the right data at the right time. But here's the thing. Not all data needs the same level of security. It just doesn't make sense, right? You wouldn't protect a public press release with the same intensity you'd use for, say, your secret product designs or your customers' personal information. So how do organizations figure out what level of security to apply where? The answer is something called data classification. The DMBOOK lays out this idea of sorting data into different levels of confidentiality. You can see some typical levels here. You've got your public data, which can be shared freely with anyone, then internal use only for stuff that stays inside the company. Then it gets more serious with confidential or restricted, which is on a strict need-to-know basis. And at the top, you have regulated data, which is subject to really specific legal rules. And it's this classification that tells you exactly what kind of locks and keys you need for each piece of information. Okay, so our data is governed and it's secure. We're good to go, right? Well, not quite. There's another huge question we have to ask. Is the data itself any good? And that brings us to our third major area, data quality. This is all about making sure your data is actually fit to be used. And you should really think of this like a continuous health check for your information, to make sure it's healthy enough to be trusted for making decisions. Now, what's so important to get about data quality is that it isn't just one single thing. It's actually measured across several different dimensions, like the ones you see here. For instance, you might have data that is perfectly accurate. The numbers are all correct. But if it's not timely, meaning it arrives a week late, then it's totally useless for a daily report, right? So you have to look at all of these things, accuracy, completeness, timeliness, and so on, to really know if your data is fit for the job you need it to do. And this lack of fitness for purpose can have some really serious real-world consequences. This is a classic example from the DMBOOK. A news outlet reported these two giant numbers that seemed to tell a pretty dramatic story. But there was a huge problem. The welfare number counted households, while the jobs number counted individuals. They weren't comparing apples to apples. This is a perfect example of poor validity, one of those quality dimensions. The definitions didn't match, the comparison was invalid, and the result was a completely misleading narrative, all because of a data quality issue. Okay, so we've been deep inside the mechanics of the data wheel. We've talked governance, security, quality, but now let's zoom back out and look at the big picture. Why does any of this framework matter, especially if you're not, a data person? Because at the end of the day, adopting a framework like the DMBOK isn't about creating more red tape or technical bureaucracy. Not at all. It's about generating real, tangible value for the business. We're talking about reducing risk, improving how efficiently everything runs, and, of course, enabling everyone to make better, smarter, data-driven decisions. It's about establishing clear ownership for one of the company's most important assets. And honestly, this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from the entire DMBOK. It's the simple but powerful idea. Data management is a business function. It is not just an IT concern. The needs of the business have to drive the technology choices, not the other way around. And you know what that means? It means it doesn't matter if you're in marketing or finance or sales or operations, you have a stake in this. You play a role in making sure your organization's data is managed well. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. Your organization has data. That's a given. Every organization does. But the real question, the one that the DMBOK really forces you to ask is, do you have a plan for it?